This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing. I'm very excited about this episode. You folks are going to love Tonya Todd. She's super cool. But I also want to give a little shout out to some folks who we've seen a real increase in the number of subscribers. So if you are a subscriber, I can't see names of podcast subscribers, but please do subscribe on the podcast. If you're a podcast listener, we love that. And if you are on YouTube, I wanted to give shout outs to just some random folks who have joined the list. Thanks to people like Aaron Surabur and Zanil Rashke and Tiff Loves Words and the Amity. If you are listening right now, notice I see you and appreciate you. And of course, everybody, I know I've whined about the person who is downvoting all the shows on YouTube. So if you are listening to this and do like what we do, take a sec, click that thumbs up. I respect that everybody can have their opinion about the show, and have a kind of grudging respect for this person's dedication to come back and make me feel bad every week. But if you could compensate for that by clicking on the thumbs up as you are checking the show out, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, that's enough of that. Now to the show with the wonderful Tonya Todd.
Today's secret word is meow.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Today's guest is Tonya Todd. Tonya Todd is an author, actress, activist, the editor of Comics Lit. I'm very excited to have you. How's it going today, Tonya?
Meow. I'm very glad to be here and talk with a fellow nerd.
Oh, yes, we're going to nerd out today. Anybody who is comics adjacent, even, you are going to be going, oh, yeah, these are the people who, know their stuff. Oh, I didn't even realize till just this second that I'm wearing a comic book shirt. It's like I prepared. Let's pretend that I prepared for that. No, I'm not. Because, of course, we always dress up in costume. Nobody, pretend you didn't hear that, those of you listening to the podcast, because we have to tell everybody about the costumes we chose to wear. So the folks watching on YouTube can see that we are in these fantastic costumes, but the folks on the podcast are unaware. So tell everybody about the costume you're wearing.
Well, to honor the reason that I'm here, I decided to go with my Jim Ballant era purple Catwoman catsuit.
Yes, it's amazing. Yes, and a cat. Yes, prepared. Well, I am, I'm never going to be intimidating. So I went with, I'm dressed as William Talkman, the Clock King, as played by Walter Slezak in the Batman TV show from 1966. So I've got this top hat with a clock in the middle, and I've got, just a normal suit and my cape on. And then here on the chest, I think in 1966, they couldn't make an actual working clock that was flat. And so it's just a patch that looked like a clock. It's not in any way intimidating. So yeah, I am the opposite of a scary villain. I'm an old guy in a suit with a clock patch on his chest.
You're an inspiration to Flavor Flav.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Oh my gosh. Have you heard about Flavor Flav's thing where he funded the Olympic women's water polo team?
How awesome is that?
I love that guy. Like he's great. One of the people I follow on TikTok was posting about it, and then Flavor Flav himself, commented just, like a little simple thank you, and we all just kind of went nuts. Like, oh my gosh, the real Flavor Flav responded to you on TikTok. And then I responded to her like, wait, and then you liked my comment about how cool that was. You're my Flavor Flav. So I have been excited to have you on to hear about this collection of essays, Comics Lit, that you put out. So tell everybody about how this kind of came together and what they will find when they get their copy.
So this came together because I was interviewed by A.R. Farina, who is my co-editor in this essay collection. I met him through a mutual podcaster. Like I had just met that person. He heard me on his show, invited me to talk about indie comics because Tony does a show. Tony is A.R. Farina, sorry. He does a show called Indie Comic Spotlight. And so he brought me on there to talk about Black the comic. And as soon as we got on screen, I saw that he had 6 books behind him and that they are Jane Austen books. And I'm a huge Jane Austen
Yes.
fan. And so is he. And it was like, did we just become best friends? We're here to
Yeah.
talk about comics and we both love Jane Austen. And yes, we did become best friends, you know. And he told me about this collection that he had in mind about how a lot of comic book characters are essentially classic literature characters, just
Yeah.
reinvented in a different media. And he was right. You know, it's like, yeah, I started thinking about them. My original one that came to mind was the Hulk and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes, absolutely.
And so he said, "Do you want to be a part of this, maybe?" I said, "Sure, just let me know when you do it." And it was kind of dormant for a while. He wasn't doing, you know, we're involved in a lot of different stuff. So it wasn't on the front burner at the time. But I ended up having an opportunity to speak at a writing conference that was online. And I stuck around because there was a publisher that I knew, Four Horsemen Publication, and you know, they were going to be speaking. I would be silly to not
Right.
sit in and listen to what they have to say because what they've done with their company is pretty amazing. And I was specifically singled out to say, "Hey, do you have any particular questions?" And probably because I was one of the speakers. And I said, "Sure, you know, if I have to come up with a question off the top of my head, do you think you guys would ever be interested in a collection like this?" And they like hands reached out to the screen, "Give it to us now."
Ah,
All right. So I contacted Tony and said, "Hey, you know that thing? I found someone who might be interested, so you might want to move on it." And he asked if I would help him. And of course, he's amazing. I'll help him in any way I can. And we ended up co-editing it, going through the different essays and inviting people to participate in it. And we put it together and sent in a proposal. They accepted it. And it's finally coming out the first week of October.
oh, that's so cool. Well, I have a long, you know, I teach high school English, and when I'm teaching about ancient Greek mythology, Roman mythology, you know, I always talk about how we think of like a pantheon as something very foreign, but we
Right.
absolutely have our pantheon, and you know, it's our comic book heroes and villains interacting. That, you know, these are our stories. But I hadn't thought of the fact that we drew so much of our pantheon from 18th century literary figures. But
Yes.
that's a great insight into, you know, how we went, okay, we need a pantheon too, but who are these wonderful characters? So you've got you know, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and that is that tension. And so many of the whole comics is, you know, here's this character who could lose control and become villainous, and yet we're supposed to sympathize, but also we sympathize with Bruce Banner, and how do we hold that in tension? Who
Right.
were some of the other characters that you that folks pointed out in the
So
anthology?
here's the thing. I didn't end up writing that one yet because when it came time to sit down and do it, I wrote about Catwoman.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what it was. It was just like, you know what? This is calling to me more. And Catwoman as Irene Adler,
Oh
who
yeah.
is Sherlock's foil. You know, this
Yeah,
is the woman for Sherlock and the Catwoman for Batman. They
absolutely.
both have
Incredibly
detectives.
competent and, you know, brilliant and, you know, not, you know, sympathetic in some ways. Not, you know, Irene
Right.
Adler is not just a mustache twirling, you know, villain. We like her. And yet, yeah, that's a
Right.
good
And they're
choice.
both women who get away with their crimes because of the way the detectives feel about them.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, that's
It's not that
um
they don't solve the crime,
yeah.
but they get away with it.
Yep, yep. Oh, we found out who did it. It was her again. And also also she's often one step ahead, which is so
Right.
nice to see. You know, here is this female character who is not portrayed as incompetent, or, you know, she's incredible, hyper
Or
competent,
in need
and
of rescue all the time. It's like,
yes,
nope,
yes.
we're going head to head here,
Yeah.
and you have met your equal in this person, which is why they respect them.
Yeah.
And then they ended up,
And yet within their kind of misogynistic, kind of patriarchal framework, they are wrestling with, I can't believe this woman is my equal. That's really hard for me as a man to acknowledge. And I love that too, that, you know, like that, you know, let's recognize these guys don't know what to do with the fact
right.
that they cannot deny logically she is absolutely their equal or superior in so, you know, so many
Mhm.
instances.
Like the only person who can sneak up on Batman is Catwoman.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great pick. Any others that from the other writers that come to mind that were ones where you went, oh, that isn't good insight.
Well, Rappaccini's daughter and Poison Ivy, that's the one that Tony wrote about. And that when he was pitching the whole thing to me, I was like, wow, I just never made that connection. And that one
Right.
is just so strong.
Yeah.
It feels like it had to have been intentional.
Yeah.
And then I think that because you mentioned your interest in Greek literature, I think there will be one that interests you. And I don't even want to spoil it for you. I just want to tease you with it.
Okay. Yes. And the book comes out when?
It's the first week of October.
First week of October, but folks can pre-order it now. I know this for a fact
Yes.
because I did. So, so yes, it will be on the way to your doorstep. Go pre-order it now so you don't forget. The thing with pre-orders, folks, is pre-orders are a help to you because you get like the dopamine rush twice because you pre-order it and you're like, yay, I'm gonna have this book coming. And then if you're like me, you totally forget about it. And then it shows up in your mailbox and you're like, oh yeah, I was really looking forward to that. So
Yes.
pre-order it now. Do yourself a favor. Get happy twice from that.
I would argue you get happy 3 times, but then you get to read it.
Then you get to read it. Yes, yes, exactly. Well, yes, if you're more vigilant than I am, because I will put it in the TBR pile, and then it's oh yeah, I was really looking forward to this. So that's the third time. Yes.
Yeah, I won't pretend like I don't have an extensive, like, really more than one, because there's the physical TBR pile, there's all the books that you order on Kindle, there's all the Audible books that are just sitting there, and hey, my Goodreads want to read collection.
Yes, and I don't actually do them in sequence. Like, it will be, oh, I'm going to the next thing in oh, wait, this is, taking precedence. And so the
Yes,
TBR pile is constantly in flux. But
right.
and it has to do with what mood I'm in and, where kind of I am in my life. Oh, right now I need an epic fantasy because, I'm going to have a little bit of time. Oh, now
Yeah.
I need something that's quick and fun and funny.
Yeah, I
The
get
great
it.
thing
I mean,
about this
I
one is
read a
you could
lot of
read it in
heavy
pieces.
literature, and so I need to have my light and fluffy book for bedtime. Like I
Yes.
can't have all of this darkness in my head right before I'm trying to go to sleep. So
Yeah.
I need
Well, and
all of it. And then there's the stuff that's just for me. I'm reading at least 3 books all the time.
yes, and wish I were like that. I tend to be, one thing at a time because otherwise I'll get lost. But I can do that when it's here's a novel and then here's something that's non-fic, and
Hmm.
that's easier. And this one is great because you can jump in and out of it. I'm going to read this essay, and then
Right.
I'm, working on this, this big giant fantasy tome, and then I'm back to this essay, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna
You
read
don't
some
have to
comic books
sit.
for a while.
You don't have to read it in one sitting. You could if you chose, but you have the opportunity to read it in segments without losing anything.
Yeah, well, and I also love the cover, so it's a good coffee table book. Like this is one, I want to set out. That came out really well.
Yeah, I
So
was very pleased with it when I saw it. I was like, oh, that's not an accident.
yeah, no, no, not a bit. Yeah, that's very cool, and I assume that's Anthony, that's Tony is behind you on the comics lit
Actually,
cover.
no, it's the Superman essay was written by Eric Lee,
Oh,
who is also an artist. So he's just multi-talented, and he did a piece that is about Moses and Superman.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
There is this character who is a foreigner in a foreign land, and he becomes this leader, and
And his
he's
parents said, you're
yeah.
safer if you go away from me. And then they rise up and end up saving people.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good call. Yeah, Superman is a really complex, I mean, a really interesting character compared to other heroes because, he is in his true form as the superhero and his
Hmm.
alter ego is the fake rather than, just about every other superhero. This is the real Superman, is Superman, and Clark
See, I
Kent
feel
is,
that way about Batman. Batman is his real identity, and Bruce Wayne is his fake identity.
but I wonder if that came about over time because of the Superman. Like, then people realized, oh, Batman is more his real self also. Like Superman
Yeah.
kind of inspires that. Like,
I came
oh,
to Batman first, so it's possible that it was just I already knew him
yeah,
before by the time I was reading Superman stuff, I was like, he's very tame.
Yeah, well, he's tame and he's OP. That's my challenge with Superman is the tension is never in the battle. Like the tension is he going to be found, whatever, because his powers are, so off the charts. And I was
He's
recently
definitely
reading
good
an
to have in
article.
your corner, though, like
Yeah,
which Batman knows, like,
yeah,
yeah, I'll keep this friend.
yeah. It's good. It's good to have the tank in the party. That's
Right.
not,
But I'll
never
also know
bad.
how to take him down.
Yes, which that that's one of the things I love about Batman is there's this undercurrent, not of villainy, but like I am so prepared that maybe even my friends shouldn't trust me because I have made sure I can take them all out too.
Yeah, well,
And
they've done
that's
that storyline.
yeah, and that's a really interesting tension. Like, can you trust the guy who's also preparing to destroy you? Yeah,
Mostly. And I would argue that Clark does trust him. Like he's the one
yeah.
who's like, yeah, but I trust his motives.
Yeah, yeah. But I think the others in the team, in order to provide that tension, are like, no, that makes me feel uncomfortable around him.
Right. Yeah.
And also, Batman is so, isolated and neurotic and everything that he's like, I don't fully care if you trust me, but also I really
Right.
want you to trust me. I need people and I care, but also I don't care.
Right. Batman's like, sounds like a you problem.
Yep,
You know?
yep. There was I'm trying to remember which cartoon version it was the one in the night, not it was a Justice League cartoon,
Yeah.
but a couple generations ago, I think, iterations ago, and it was somebody has been going through and splicing just the moments where Batman just is super dismissive of everyone else in the
Oh,
group
I
and
would love to
just has
watch
no
that
F's to give,
compilation.
and it's so funny because he's just like, whatever, come on, like.
Yeah, if you find that, please send it to me
I
because
will say
I want to
it's
watch that.
so funny. And the person who's splicing them isn't like, doing like video capture. They've got it on their TV and you can just hear them laughing so hard as they cut these things together. It's pretty great. Yeah, because Batman, yeah, no F's to give. He's so I wanted to ask you about what you're doing when you're not doing all your writing and all of your, I mean, a thousand things. So what has been a distraction that has pulled you away from your work lately?
A big distraction for me is something that is writing related. It's the research. Like right now, I'm researching Victorian era because I'm writing a Dracula retelling. And then that gives me an opportunity to delve into just vampire research, which admittedly I don't need at all. I don't need it. However, it's so fun. And you just you get there and you're like, well, maybe I'll learn something, or maybe I'll just enjoy myself because this is the world
Yeah.
I love.
Well, and
Just
not to get too processy, but in my latest series, I've got vampires, and you do have to make all these decisions about how do the
Mhm.
vampires operate in my world. It's like a next level version of are my zombies fast or slow?
Right.
Are my vampires actually affected by crosses? Are my vampires,
Mhm.
is holy water a thing in this universe? And
Right.
so there is some real research that has to go on just so you can go, well, how would that alter the story if my vampires are like crosses are a joke to us,
Right. Like, what if you're a Jewish vampire?
Right. Yes, yes. So I took a bunch of notes at one point for I was intending to do a Bram Stoker's Dracula retelling, but
Hmm.
set in the modern era. And it's one of those projects that at some point I will go back to because there's so much fun you could have with that. So have you already been kind of going through and going, oh, would you retell it in the modern era or would you tell it in the Victorian era?
No, this I'm telling it in the Victorian era because what I'm doing is telling it from another character's perspective in a sense. It's from Mina's point of view.
Yeah. Oh,
And everything that they did was written in letters. And so those are unreliable narrators. We don't
yes.
know if they're telling the truth. This could just be what they decided to put in print.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
what
they're
I'm doing is
letters
telling
within
it what's
letters and so
behind the scenes, what's really happening. And to be fair, they couldn't have done any of that without her.
yeah.
So the point of view of the woman who is being dismissed all the time, like they flat out, she puts it all together, pieces all of it, taking all the different literature, the notes and the journals and the newspaper clippings and all this stuff. She's the one who puts it together and figures out all of this is connected. And they're like, okay, but from here on out, we don't want you to be involved because you're a woman and this is too scary and dangerous.
So are
Dude,
you doing it where it's, where she's being explicit about that and going, you know, I was totally, neglected in this story. Here's what really happened. And it's kind of, from her perspective in that way, where she's like, I
No,
actually solved
she's not
this.
aware that this was told in another way. I'm just going
Okay.
through it as it's happening to her.
Yeah. Oh, that
It's
would
my
be,
first experience writing in present tense too. Like I do not enjoy present tense in general, but as I was writing, it just kept coming out that way. And I found as soon as I stopped fighting it, the words flowed. I'm like, all right, I guess this is how she wants her story told.
yeah. Isn't that cool? I tell students all the time, like, they'll say, should I write in this tense or that tense? Should I write in this point of view or that point of view? And I say, the story demands one or the other. Like there are
Right.
stories that work better in one or the other. And one of the revision activities I have them do is take a small chunk and rewrite it in another and find
Yes.
out maybe it's better. And yeah, it's like you said, when you hit that groove, you're like, oh, this is the one the story wants to be told in. But yeah, that it is kind of a magic moment when you're like, oh yeah, I found it. But yeah, it can be a little frustrating. All my novels are in different ones because I really want to play
Mhm.
with that, So I've got one in third limited, and I've got one in third, series in third omniscient, and a couple in first person. And playing around with that is fun for me, but it is challenging because there are times when you're like, oh, I would like to reveal this other character's thoughts. Oh, I can't. I have
Yeah,
committed to,
because
this
your
tense.
character would not know that.
Yeah. Which can create some fun tension too. So, yeah, a present tense I could imagine being challenging but really fun, like once you get into it.
The thing is, I wasn't getting into it. I just found that I kept writing sentences in it. I'm like, what am I doing? I
Yeah.
hate present tense, and I would go back and fix it. And then I took a moment because what you were just saying, that exercise, my first short story that I ever wrote, I was writing in third person limited because that's my jam, like
Yeah.
that's what I prefer. And I was having difficulty. And my mentor, Gregory Compass, said, just try it in another tense, like, just to get over the block it's not really a block, but just like that speed bump of why am I having trouble articulating what I want to say? Like it's there. I can write it, but it's not coming quickly. Just try it in another tense so that your focus is on something else. And once I did that, it's like I was just taking dictation and that
Yeah.
character was telling me the story from their perspective. And I was learning stuff as I was typing. It was like, really? And then what happened? And then what? And it turns out that character was a vampire. That was not my intent when I sat down to write.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I specifically was not trying to do that. I had a prompt that I had to use that had to be in Nevada, and it had to, because it was for an anthology. And
Hmm.
so they were curating it and saying, all right, it's going to be judged, but it has to have the theme of redemption and it has to be set in Nevada. Those are your two things.
Yeah.
Well, apparently it was a vampire who needed redemption.
It wanted to be a vampire story. Like,
Yes.
sometimes the story is like, this is the story, this is where the story wants to go. Oh, I love that when you realize it. Until then, you're
Yeah.
right. It's very frustrating.
It's like, how did I not know this? I love vampires,
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm excited for that one. And so where are you at in that book process at this point?
So that was a short story, and
Oh,
that
okay.
was my first
No, I
publication.
mean the
Oh, the
Dracula.
Mina one.
Yeah.
I am about, I want to say 30,000 words into it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty early.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's fun and it's nice to 30,000 is enough that this is going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
And I read Dracula last year, and that's kind of where, like, I'm reading it and just, I was getting all this frustration. Like, do they realize how valuable she is?
Yes.
And so I thought, I'm going to just put this on the page and I will tell your story, Mina.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I have you, girl.
Yes. Well, I will. My notes I'll just toss because you'll tell the better story. So
No,
I
no,
know it's
there's
in good
room for
hands.
more than one.
I
Yours
have
is
more of those than because
contemporary.
the same thing for me. I was reading Bram Stoker's Dracula again as an adult. I'd read it in like high school, and I was
Mhm.
like, this deserves to be retold. Like this is such a well-constructed story, and you don't realize that necessarily when you haven't had enough stories to compare it to, and then you're
Right.
like, oh, but the letters thing, do I want to play with that? And there are
Yeah.
lots of different ways to do it that can be fun. So yeah,
And I'm
that'll
not
be a
doing that
kick.
because I want to be in her head while all of this
Yeah.
stuff is happening.
Yeah, there's recently been a film that was just the ship scene, which is like tossed off. I
Yes.
haven't seen it yet, but
I haven't either, but it's on my list because,
yeah,
I'm just curious. And, Dracula is another one. It's like Loki, Batman, Dracula. Those are
yep.
my guys. Those are my fictional male crushes.
Yeah, well, and folks don't know, like, if folks haven't read Bram Stoker's Dracula, that scene on the ship is tossed off. Like the ship sails from, Transylvania to London, shows up, nobody's left alive on it. That's all we need for the plot. Moving
Right.
on. Well, what
Like
happened
we
on
just
that
get
ship?
we get the log from the captain. Like we
Yeah,
get it in little
and
bits.
it's something bad is happening on this boat. Oh,
Right.
wait, something really bad. Oh,
People
something
are
really bad. Now
missing.
it's here.
People are missing, and this guy's acting crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess one of the reasons I want to check out the film is if they are faithful to that, it will not have a happy ending.
Right, exactly. Well, it will for me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes, yes. Um, so changing gears, what else news-wise has caught your attention that's been pulling you away from your work?
So there was the Olympics. I was really trying not to get too distracted with that, but it's excellence in motion.
Yeah,
Even if it's not an event you would ever participate in, it's still enjoyable to watch someone doing really well at it.
right.
And so I loved watching the Olympics. And it was so great that they had like an entire channel devoted to it. So okay, I don't have to watch it live. I
Yeah,
can sit and just binge on this particular segment or watch the people in the awards competition rather
yeah.
than having to watch it from the beginning. And then there's also I'm planning a trip to London because Much Ado About Nothing was announced in the last week or so that Jamie Lloyd is going to be directing it. And so the last thing I saw directed by Jamie Lloyd was absolutely phenomenal. It was one of the best things I've ever seen live. And I've been wanting to return to London anyway, so here's my excuse.
Will it be at the Globe?
No, it's at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane.
Oh, okay, I don't know that one because yeah, if you get a chance to, well, you're there, go see something in the Globe because it is an experience, and they do really creative. I mean, it's not like we need to make this archaic. Like they do really cool modern stuff in this very traditional setting, and so it's a wonderful experience to be in there standing, like you're literally standing like a groundling if you choose to, and yet you get to see really cool modern interpretations of Shakespeare that are fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, seeing Much Ado in London, what a cool experience that would be.
And see, what I saw was Betrayal, Pinter's Betrayal,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's a story about an affair and the relationship dynamics between a husband, a wife, and the husband's best friend who's having an affair with the wife. And what Jamie Lloyd did is had his actors all on stage in every scene. Even if it's only the two of them, the other person is there in the background because they're all there,
yeah,
and that it was a very bare set.
yeah,
There wasn't that much on the stage because this was about relationships and dynamics and guilt and the weight of having this other person inside of your relationship
yeah.
because this person was inside of their relation. Like no matter what the
You
pairing,
brought this person into the room, whether they're in the room or not, they're always in the room.
right?
That's a
Yeah,
really
it
excellent
was
choice.
fantastic. And it was just so powerful.
Yeah, I
That
can
little
imagine the
touch.
tension the whole show because they're right there. And
Right.
so,
And so if something so stripped down and bare minimum can be that powerful, I want to see this. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I'm there.
yeah. Well, especially with Much Ado, which is so fun, but you could make a version of it that is, I mean, creepy. There's a lot of, room within that
Right.
show to go. Am I going to make the creepy version of Much Ado? Am I going to make this tragic version? We're watching it and the characters are telling laugh lines and we're going, ah, yeah, but now that I see it in this situation, it's not funny. Like there's a lot you could do with that. So yeah, that will be
Yeah.
really cool.
Oh, and the other thing that's been keeping me occupied is the way orcas are attacking boats because they just sunk another one in Spain.
It's so great. Yes, my wife has been super into like, cheering on the orcas. And she's like,
Yes.
I need to get a bumper sticker for my car that's like I'm with the orcas. But I was reading a piece that this is not that orcas, especially teenagers, have fads, just like human teens, and that the kind of model they used for this was in Puget Sound, just up the way from me in Seattle. There was this period where teenage orcas were killing salmon and then putting the salmon on their heads
Yes.
as
Yes.
hats. And that was their fad. And this is this new, it's not like, hey, we need to get revenge. It's like, hey, and it's very specifically the rudders. They're not trying to sink the ships, they're attacking the rudders.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think that's an excuse. Orcas are brilliant. They
Yeah.
are extremely intelligent and they have a great capacity to learn. What they don't have are legs or opposable thumbs.
Yes.
And they recognize that we can't just go around killing a bunch of people because then they're going to come out here and hunt us. But if we attack their boats, we're protected. We're gold.
Yeah. And even, well, and it's a very teenage behavior too, to test the boundaries, to go,
Right.
how many of these boats can we mess up? We didn't sink them, we didn't kill the people,
Right.
but we can get away with
Just
this before they
property.
start shooting us. Like,
Yeah. And I think that they know, I mean, look, when orcas were getting upset in captivity, were they killing people and eating them? No. They were murdering them.
yeah,
They were killing them with, so there was no, hey, it's just natural behavior. Is it? Is it natural behavior to sink someone
yeah,
and not eat? Like if they were starving or they can't help what they're doing, it's just that they're a beast, you know?
Yeah.
No, they were just murdering people.
yeah, yep. That's yes. It is certainly a story to continue to follow, because where do the orcas go from here? If it
Yeah.
is boundary testing, what's next for the orcas? So
Yeah. I mean, like, how do they know if you kill a shark in this one spot and just rip out the liver? That's the good part. Like, the only other animal that has the capacity for such evil is humans.
yes. Well, and I think that's maybe
they're gonna
one of
kill
the
something
tensions
for
is we're
one
watching the
piece.
orcas and we're like, shame on the orcas for behaving like us.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's
They
great.
trophy kill. That's awful.
Yeah. Yep. Although cats do that too. Cats totally are little murder beasts, where they're like, oh, this one I don't actually want to eat. This one's just to honing my skills. This is
They
fun.
gift it. But
Yes.
they
This is a
gift it.
present
That's
for
not a
you.
trophy kill because they don't keep it and save it. They give
That's
it.
true. It's a present.
It's a kill with love. Not
That's
that I'm a
very Catwoman.
gynecologist at all.
Yes. Seeing somebody dressed in a Catwoman costume say it's a kill with love is like, that's a whole thing right there.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go to our ad break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately. Special announcement time. NotAPipePublishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, the show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone: 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60 second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run one or two of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
Hi, I'm children's author Sarah Geddes. I'd love for you to check out my book, Henry the Sneezing Dragon. It's about a clumsy dragon in search of friendship. My book, To the Moon, a Jacob and Trevor adventure, will be released September 2024, a story about two little boys who use fairy dust to travel to the moon. And in fall 2024, The Water Bear Astronaut, about a tardigrade who travels to space, will also be coming out. All books will be available on Amazon.
No one wants to live in a country ruled by wizards, unless the alternative is worse. Peter Watts, author of Blindside, says, a near-perfect blend of implacable horror, gallows humor, and ecological apocalypse. Nick Namatis, author of The Second Shooter, says, relentlessly radical and often hilarious. Cascade, Book 1 in the Sleep of Reason trilogy, by Rachel A. Rosen. Available now at bookshop.org, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and at bppress.ca.
I'm realizing I need to do a better job of telling folks this. People can't know what we refuse to share. I'm a big fan of audiobooks. I've been doing a ton of work in my yard, and audiobooks have been my constant companions throughout. I know there are some people who say reading an audiobook doesn't count as reading. They are wrong. Reading with your ears requires some of the same skills as reading with your eyes, and some distinct skills, but it's still creating meaning from a text, and it counts. I have 5 of my books out in audiobook, on Audible and Amazon. The Convention of Fiends, Book 1, Don't Read This Book, and Book 2, You Were Warned. Corporate High School is narrated by Crystal Kay, and she did an amazing job. I narrated The Digital Storm with some cool voice changer software for some of the characters, so that sounds like a bit of an ensemble. And I recorded one of my collections of poetry, This Uneven Universe, as a gift for my wife Crystal, who wanted to be able to listen to it while driving. So if audiobooks are a way you enjoy reading, check those out. And if you like them, let me know, readers and reviewers. Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Tonya Todd, the editor of Comics Lit. And Tonya, when you've been daydreaming, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
I usually daydream about like having my novel published because I have a book on submission and
Valid.
it's been on submission for, I'm doing all these other things, but in the back of my mind, yeah, but there's still this one thing that I want. So if my mind wanders, that's where it goes. But I have to say that usually I'm thinking about all the things I'm neglecting for my writing.
Yes.
The emails that I'm not writing, the planning that I'm not doing, or I'm planning in the back of my head, but there's always something going on. Like right now I'm doing the banned book series.
Oh, yeah.
So every year I do a series where I cover 7 different banned books with 7 different panels for Banned Books Week. And one of those episodes comes out each day during the week. So right now I'm in the middle of getting questions together for each episode and reading those books. And I do have all the panels together at this point, but like it just takes a great deal of my summer.
Yeah.
Putting that together, getting, with 7 different panels, and they usually have like 2 to 3 people on it, getting a time that all of us can record for about an hour. And they're not all in the same time zones. They're not even all in the same country,
Yeah, the logistics are really challenging. And if they're not in the same country, the banned books, I imagine that complicates, the way you're talking about the banned books themselves, because the banning is different geographically, right? And so there's
different, but it's still a similar issue. And it's in English, like my podcast is in English, so it's going to be English speaking countries that have a lot of similar issues.
Right. Yeah.
And it does make for an interesting perspective, because the first year we had a British white man talking about Stamped, which is about American history and racism here. So getting his perspective after reading that book, to me, that added an extra layer of intrigue and depth that I couldn't have predicted.
Yeah. Now, has your show gotten into, not to get partisan particularly, but I feel like it's almost inescapable. Have you talked about Project 2025 in that context, in the banned books?
I haven't brought it up. I think it did come up during one of the recordings this year. I'm still in the middle of it. Like I'm about halfway through.
It's wild. I was doing some research about it, and it's this, there's a division within this 900-page text where one section is all about what they call the LGBTQIA agenda. And they're like, we need to prevent this. And then they've got this other section that's ostensibly about pornography. Only, of course, nobody ever defines pornography clearly. So pornography is whatever some bureaucrat decides is pornography. Well, in that description, it says, and anything that furthers the LGBTQIA agenda. Well, if you go back to that section, I've got books which have, queer characters. I've got, just about every author I know who's trying to have real representation in their books of the lives we actually live. There are some queer. Well, if some bureaucrat says that's furthering the agenda, then you skip down to that other section and it's, here's what we're going to do about pornography. The person will be a registered sex offender. Their book will be banned, and you're like, well, this is terrifying. Like,
In
because I've got
2024, this is what is happening. Like, come on.
right. Yeah, it is genuinely very scary to me that that I don't think people have really thought through how terrifying this should be for, content creators of any kind. Like your favorite movie's got a
Right.
queer character in it. Is that furthering the LGBTQIA
And it
agenda?
hits nonfiction stuff
Yep.
too.
Yep.
Like, okay, this person really existed and they really were queer.
Yep.
Oh, but that's part of the agenda.
Well,
Telling the
and
truth is
you
part of the
know,
agenda.
well, and we've seen this, impetus to already say, oh, our actual, especially our racial history, we're just going to pretend that that didn't happen and not tell that story because telling
Right.
that story is wokeism and it's scary to us.
Because
And
it
if
makes
it's the
people
same
feel
thing, do we
bad.
force people back into
Well,
the closet? Like it's scary.
yeah, it's actually terrifying.
Yeah.
One of the books that I covered this year is When Tango Makes Three. Like, it's just beautiful, touching children's story about something that really happened, and that is attacked because it's furthering the queer agenda.
Yeah.
It's just telling about something that actually happened.
Yeah.
And no place does it say, and you should do this too.
Right.
You know?
But if we get to the place where even acknowledging our own history is an agenda, what
Right.
is the alternate agenda? Like clearly the alternate agenda is denial as agenda. Like
Yes.
I'm like just say so. You don't want to acknowledge this is actually the country we live in, which, is on stolen land with stolen bodies and people living in fear. Like that
Right.
that really is where we come from.
Exactly. When they're like, speak American, right? Which of these indigenous languages would you like to speak?
Yeah, that's right. I can't. I don't know Lenape. Like that's not happening, Yeah, that's it's I hope people will start waking up to that even more as things, shows like yours are pointing out this banned book, the impulse to ban books comes from a place. And what is that place? What
An
is the
impulse to
real
ban
agenda to keep
knowledge.
those out of people's hands?
Right. Yeah, that the agenda behind it is something that we discuss. We didn't specifically get into Project 2025, though. I just feel like somebody mentioned it, but it wasn't like we sat there and discussed that in depth. It was just, it's all part of this whole thing.
Yes. Yep, it's what did Harris say the other day? This is, same old playbook. Like, this is the same old playbook. Like we have seen this before. Well, I am glad that, as a high school English teacher who is putting books in kids' hands, I am so glad you are confronting that, because that impulse to ban books is how do we keep these out of kids' hands so they are unaware of
Right.
what's going on. So how's that show? How far are you into that series?
So this is my third year doing it. And what's been interesting is not everyone who's the first year I thought we're all going to be on board. We have the exact same mindset. I hope this isn't boring because they're all going to, yeah, I agree.
Preaching to the choir, right?
And right. And it wasn't like that. And, one of the things I frequently ask is have you ever been affected by, or not affected, but offended by a book? And then also, do you think that there is ever a reason to ban a book?
Yeah.
And the first year, someone brought up a book that they think should be banned. And it was the first time, like, someone really made me question, because I'm so nonsense. Like, I do not want censorship at all. I'm anti-censorship all the way. I don't want to, like, hinder someone's art or their creative process. Yeah. And I feel like if we don't have the freedom to create what we want, like, put whatever you want down, and then you can, you revise things.
Right.
I don't want somebody else's offense to be the reason that I'm revising something.
Right.
I want it to be because it's not best for the story, or it's not true to the character, or something like that, or it's just not pretty prose, something like that. Not, I don't want people to be unhappy with what I wrote. I don't want that in my mind, because then it's not art anymore.
Yeah.
But she brought up this book that is, I don't know the name of it. It's a children's book where a duck is being tickled, and they just keep tickling the duck, and the duck is saying, I don't want to be tickled. Please stop tickling me. Oh, you'll like it. And they just keep tickling the duck, even though the duck is saying no, 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 all the way through. And at the end of the story, and this is targeted for little kids, like this is a board book. The duck is laughing, saying, ha, 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 it's okay that you tickled me. Like, I'm glad you tickled me, even though I said no.
Yeah.
Like,
the
that
exact
is
opposite message we need to be giving young children about consent.
Right. Like, that is such a dangerous message about consent that, yeah, I can see why she feels that way.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I share that kind of tension because I run a small press, and I want people to be able to tell whatever story they want to tell, and also we have to make choices about what to publish. And so
Right.
there is kind of this inherent gatekeeping where we're saying, yeah, it's fine that you want to write whatever you want to write, but we don't want to be associated with it necessarily.
Exactly.
We had a
But
tension where
that's
we
the
had
thing, write whatever you want.
right.
Give people the choice whether they read it or not. But something
Yep.
like that just felt like, who published that? Like,
Yep.
it's not
Yep.
it's not just about the writer. There is a team of people probably that put that together and put it in bookstores. And it's like, who thinks
Yeah.
that's okay?
But I recognize there is a kind of insidious passive censorship that's very possible. It's not just us as a small press. We say, oh, no, we don't want to publish that. But what if Ingram and Amazon say we won't print it? What if, because we
Mhm.
don't want to be associated? What if, and
Right.
so that could be a kind of shadow censorship that could prevent a story from being told. And so I want to
Exactly.
say, oh no, everything should be out there, and an artist should get to make the art that they want to make. And I also understand nobody should be obligated to be a part of it. Like, there are things that we've looked at. I just got a question the other day from somebody who had an idea for a story about we do a lot of fantasy stuff, and
Mhm.
their idea was about essentially a Selkie, like a mer character, but
Yeah.
she's villainous, and she comes up onto land to prey upon her prey, and gets a job as an elementary school teacher who's eating the children.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, but I said if you have extreme violence against children, that may be something that it is the story requires, but I would not read it. Like I would have a hard
Is that,
time
is she the
reading a story with
protagonist?
violence against children, right? So that's a decision that the artist has to make, and I wouldn't want that to be censored, but I recognize if I say no, it is a kind of censorship.
It's a censorship from your, it's not like you're saying you don't think it should be out in the world. You're just
Right.
saying, I'm not going to be part of that.
Right. And we, we're very, we've been very clear about there are things, I mean, on the submissions page, like
Mhm.
there are things we will not publish. And then we had like one year where we made a commitment to only publish women for a year. And we had people saying, people, men saying, oh, that's hard on me, right? And we were like, we're not obligated to publish your work. Like we're not a public entity. Like we get to make,
Right.
choices.
Number
And
one,
yeah,
it's only a year. Number two, there's no guarantee that you were going to be published with us anyway. And number three, there are a lot of other publishers out there. Just why are you focusing on me?
well, and that was my response was, if you think you could write a book, half as good as these women, go ahead and try. And then they would go away because they couldn't, like they wanted to complain, but they couldn't. They weren't, in many cases, they weren't even writers. They were just saying, this offends me as a cishet white guy
Yeah.
because I'm the most put upon person in the whole world because, I'm a cishet white guy. Like, and, it was just, if you're not willing to acknowledge how absurd you sound right now, go away. you know? Uh, So, but I am really grateful that you're doing that and you're bringing attention to that book banning because I think that is something we need to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I plan to continue it as long as it feels relevant or that I'm called to do this. Like
Yeah.
there might come a day where I feel compelled to do something else and I can't handle doing all of it. But it's just been so interesting to me, the conversations that we have. There's a variety of perspectives on here, and some people will be like, well, I want content warnings, and some people are like, well, just let parents not allow their children to read this stuff, you don't decide. And some people say, I don't even think parents should be taking this opportunity away, because sometimes parents don't want their kids to be queer, and then if they're in charge of what they're allowed to read, that poor little queer kid is still going to feel like they're all alone in the world.
Yeah.
And so there are so many ways to look at it.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to continue to get that message out that there's no one way to think about these things. And here are so many different just considerations to make when discussing this topic.
So where can folks find that show? Because I would love to follow that.
I put
Those
it out on
conversations.
YouTube on my regular Tonya Todd YouTube channel. And then if you want the audio version, it comes out on Fem On Podcast and Comics in Motion, because Comics in Motion is a network of just a lot of comic book lovers, and they have been so supportive. The first year I did it, I didn't have a podcast that made sense. Like, I did the 52 Love podcast years ago, but that didn't make sense for a place to put out that show because that's about love lessons. But they were like, use our platform, and they
Oh, that's
just put
great.
it out. They let me, both Femon, like I am a co-host on Femon, but it's not part of the format to put out an episode every day, but they put it out every day. That both Femon podcast and Comics in Motion allow me to take over for a week and put out one episode per day. They're been a wonderful, wonderful supportive group of people.
That is very cool. Well, I'll have to get a link for you from you, and we'll put it in the show notes. So folks who are like me, who are going, I need to go check out the show, can scroll down to the bottom, finish this show, please. We would appreciate it. And then go check that one out because that sounds really cool. So as a kind of a Rorschach to help folks get to know you, I like to ask authors, if you yourself were in some kind of fantasy world, if you were in, Dungeons and Dragons or, whatever, what would be your race and class? What kind of character would you be?
So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I'm already, I exist in a D&D world already, because someone I know is a DM and they modeled their vampire queen after me.
Oh, that's so cool. Yes.
She's what's considered a true vampire. So she's a living entity as opposed to the undead vampires. And so she's alive. It's not truly immortal. It's just like you get to be about age 30 and you stop aging. And she's sensitive to sunlight, so her powers are weakened in sunlight, but she's not killed by sunlight.
Yeah.
She has telekinesis, and I mean, she's a vampire queen. Like, how
Right.
how
Oh,
much
that's
more
awesome.
amazing could you be?
Perfect. Now, what do you think that reveals about you as an author?
Oh, what does it reveal about me as an author? Like, clearly, I mean, no matter how much I've tried to stay away from the vampire genre, I really did. Because I loved vampires so much growing up, I was like, yeah, but I want to write serious literature. And so I wrote what I considered to be women's fiction. And then after putting it out in the world and publishers were reading it, we kept getting the note, really feels like he's a vampire.
That's
In
great.
fact, like in the third chapter, an editor called my agent and said, you didn't tell me this was a vampire novel. And she's like, it's not. And so I said, all right, let me look at it. And one winter, like it was really a December, I said, let me just what if it,
Yeah.
And I went through and I'm going, oh my gosh, it is a vampire novel. He is a vampire. How did I not know?
Well, and like
Does it
no
like his skin
criticism,
is
like
always cold. He's a day-walking vampire, but his skin is always cold. He's always looking at her throat. He actually references a blood bond in one of his conversations with her. Like, wow, how did I was trying so hard not to make it a vampire, but it was still what it was. I'm like, all right. And I told my brother, and he's like, all of your characters are vampires. Like, just
but
even
I
if they're
love
not,
writing
they
vampires. I think this, literary versus, non-literary is such a false distinction, because you can talk about really challenging ideas with
yes.
vampires as this wonderful, they are not just a myth, they are like, multiple myths together,
Right.
they
And the
need to
reasons
devour,
behind
they're
all of it.
potentially parasitic, they are immortal, and you can do so much with what would it mean to not have to worry about death in the same way a human does. And
Right.
yeah, I think they're really fantastic characters to play with. Have you
And
read Octavia
he's a
Butler's?
character who is on a deadline for something, but he's over 100 years old. He's used to not having to worry about time. So this is like a real problem for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm
Have you
not
read
used to having to
Octavia
worry about how long
Butler's?
things are taking.
Yeah, late in her career. So Octavia Butler writes this very heady, sci-fi she's dealing with all these brilliant ideas. And then her last book was not YA, but a book that's very challenging science fiction, or not science fiction. It's a vampire story, where the vampire it presents, even though she's much older, presents as a child.
Are you
And
talking about what is it called? I just read that last year.
yeah, it's so good. I'm blanking on the name. It's a one-word title.
right, the fledgling or something like that.
Fledgling.
Yeah.
Yes. So good, but I mean, disturbing. It was like Octavia Butler was like, Vladimir Nabokov, I see your Lolita and raise you vampires. Like, it's,
It's because she presented as a child that it was disturbing because of
mhm.
all the sex in it, basically.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this person, yeah, and yet, she was able to
Right.
really wrestle with these really complicated ideas. So
Yeah,
she's one of my all-time faves. Like anything she writes, I just, she's like when you read Hemingway and you're like, I hate him, but I have to deeply respect that he is actually writing well. And then with
Mhm.
Octavia Butler, you're like, oh, I respect everything she's doing, and also I can love her. Like, she's my
Yeah.
anti-Hemingway. I just, I love her so much.
Well, I'm actually doing one of her books for Banned Books Week.
Oh, really?
Parable
Yeah,
of the Sower.
I will have to check that one out because yeah, I'm a total fanboy for Octavia Butler.
I'm
Like anything.
recording that one tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, okay. I will check that out. Yes, she's so great.
So, when I said I want to be a literary writer, that was my very new writer mentality. Like I didn't know what I
Yes.
was doing yet. That was just one of the restrictions I put on myself
Yes.
early on. I am very clearly over that. I had that short story. That short story turned into my first short film that I directed last year. So I am embracing my vampire.
Yeah. Lean into it. That's
And it
great.
can
And
be
it can be
literary and
literary. Like it
fantasy.
can, literary ends up being this like label that means quality. You can do high quality vampire stuff.
Yes. Yes.
That's
I mean,
great.
it's
Okay,
not
so you are
classic
now,
genre stuff, but the words are pretty. The
yeah,
story is interesting and it is high concept
yeah.
because he happens to be a vampire who's interested in a 40-year-old Black woman because he doesn't want to chase a child, you know?
Yeah. 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 And even then, he's how old?
He's over 100, so it's
There's still like that, I think is really interesting. Like,
right.
but at least
But he
it's not a
wants a
17-year-old.
grown up
That's
at least, someone
gross.
who knows what to
Like,
do. Right. He doesn't want a kid. He wants someone who's at least come into her own as a fully formed adult.
right. Yes, which I appreciate. Like that it was, attention that I was like, "Oh, okay, I've read so many of these, the like the vampire YA stuff and I'm like, I
And I'm
can't
not
get
gonna
beyond
lie, I
that."
love that stuff too, but
Yeah, but he's 128, she's 17. That's gross.
right, yeah. Like, I mean, at least let her be an adult. 17 is too young.
Yeah. Ooh,
70 is too young when you're 20.
yeah,
There's
right.
just
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, the age difference matters a lot there. Yeah. If you're
right.
even, yeah, 2019, like, ooh, my students every once in a while, some kid will be going, "Oh, I'm dating a guy who's in college." And I'm like, that's not, you think that's cool,
Yeah,
but
now
it's not cool. If he's 20 years
I'm
old and
judging
you're
him.
17, he's not telling his friends about you. That's gross.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, so you are this living vampire. You're ambushed in the woods by three level 1 goblins. What do you do?
Force blast.
Done.
You remember Magneto after what was it? Which one was that? I feel like it was Days of Future Past when he comes out and the cops all come and he's like, ugh. Like
Whatever.
he doesn't even look at them. It's just one flick of the hand and they're gone. Like I love that scene.
Yes. Yep. Perfect. Yeah. It's basically,
Right. Like I don't
that's
even
great.
like I have more important things to do,
Yeah.
but his flick of the hand means they're going, whoa.
Right. Oh, that's great. So, what's something that you want readers to, and listeners to the show to be aware of right now, where you're saying we need people to be thinking about this, now?
I feel like I wouldn't be a very responsible citizen if I didn't say that it's important to vote.
Yeah.
Whatever things matter to you, it's important to get out there and have your voice heard. Every vote counts. And I know it feels like it's just a drop in the bucket, but you can make an influence. Just the very act of you going out and voting and telling someone about it can inspire others to do the same thing. So
Yeah.
it can add up and it does matter. And you should be involved and you should be informed because you are shaping the world around you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just sitting there like sheep, letting things happen to you.
Yeah, and I think we get jaded because our system has got so much money involved, and we're saying, well, my vote doesn't matter because this candidate has this many billions of dollars and this many billions of dollars. And I've talked to political consultants, and they've, I do a lot of union work, and of course, you've got the whole political arm, and they've said, the money doesn't make as much difference as votes. Like the politicians care a lot more about who is going to vote for them because that determines whether
Right.
they have a job next week, not the money. And so the money often is a sign of voting. Like, oh, okay, well,
Right.
this, this PAC is able to give this chunk of change, but the politician will then say, how many people donated to the PAC? Because people who have donated $5 probably will get off the couch because they're, that much more committed. Whereas somebody walks in and says, I'm a billionaire, I'm going to give you $60,000. They're like, yeah, but you can only give me one vote.
Exactly.
So use your vote, people. The politicians care about you more than you think. You get to determine whether they're employed.
And you can vote with your dollars, only support things that are aligned with what you care about. And then you can call and talk to your politicians.
Yep.
Like, I'm not just talking about the big election. I'm talking about your local elections too. Call them up. They will answer the phone and talk to you, or someone, usually they will actually talk to you.
And
If
if
you
they
have a
don't,
question
that
about
tells you a lot.
something, right. And they're going to hear that you called to talk about this thing, and they're going to know that this thing matters to you. Like, it does affect them. They are thinking about it. But if you are quiet and silent, they won't know that it's important to you.
Yeah. No, I've called like my local legislator, and then they've said, "Oh, thank you for speaking about this. Would you be willing to provide testimony to a committee at the state
Yes.
legislature?"
Right.
Absolutely, and next thing you know, I'm talking to a group of legislators on the record. My thing was, we were trying to push for a bill that would make it mandatory that everybody who owns a firearm has a safe. And it's, this is the kind of thing where it's very practical. You can demonstrate this cuts down on school shootings. So they wanted a
Mhm.
teacher in there saying this is, and you're not saying you can't have a gun. You're saying you must, and you're not even saying you must put your gun in your safe.
Right.
You just
Yeah.
must
When
own
you
a
said it,
safe.
it's like, you didn't even say you have to use it.
Yep. Nope. But they found people who have safes then go, why would I set my gun next to my safe? I might as well use that as the container. And then when they do, their kid can't take it and use it in school. Like,
Right.
and as folks out there listening probably can guess, right away, there were very strong forces coming against that and saying this is an infringement. You are preventing somebody who can only afford a gun from now getting a gun because now they've got to get a safe, and therefore you are infringing on their Second Amendment rights. And we're going, no, it clearly says well regulated in the Constitution. It's the only thing that it says needs to be well regulated. But it was a really interesting experience to be to have your voice, which comes from your vote, and then that phone call turn into an ability to present to the legislature. So yeah, get involved, folks. It's not that hard. It was not a ton of time. They will ask you. Yeah, I totally hear that. Yeah, people have got to use your voice. You've got it for a reason.
Mhm.
So what is in your to read pile? What are you looking forward to?
What is in my to read pile? We talked about all the different piles,
Yes,
but
the multiple to read piles.
the thing right now, I'm finishing up banned books. So I have 2 more of those to read. I'm also part of Henderson Writers Group's author book club, where we take a book and we dissect it from an author's point of view. So that's something that I'm reading once a month, is whatever book is in line with that. But for me, the thing that I'm looking forward to reading is I finally have all of the manga for the Case Study of Vanitas.
Ooh, I don't know the series.
Oh, it's one of the most beautiful stories I've ever seen. And I watched the anime. I've watched it a few times. It's this beautiful story of friendship that happen to be vampires in it.
Yeah.
But it isn't even about that.
Yeah.
Someone showed me an episode. They're like, oh, I just saw this part and I thought you would want to see it. And it's Vampire Paris. Like, it's kind of an inverse universe. It's Paris, but now we've gone to the vampire part of it. And the sky is all red with like a spider web in it. It's just so beautiful. Like, how could you, why are you watching this without me? Start over.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that's great. So the Case Study of Vanitas.
Yes, and it's amazing. And then, you go look up, how do I read this? And it was so tough to get my hands on copies of all of it, but I finally have all of the issues, and I can't read them because I'm in the middle of banned books and I have all these deadlines that I have to hit. So that is the thing that my hands are like, okay, hurry up and finish all this stuff so that you can read this.
I love that. That is like my favorite problem. There are too many great books that I am looking forward to, and you get one and you're like, oh, I got a novella from Jesse Kwok, and who's a writer I really admire, and it's been sitting over here making me feel guilty because I know I will enjoy it, and I'm like, I need to get the time to read that one.
I have 2 more banned books to read, and then I have to read Henry the Fourth and Fifth in preparation for my essay for next year's comics lit essay.
Oh, which can I get a teaser? Which characters are you going with for those?
I feel like you should be able to guess based on some of the things I said already.
So Henry the Fifth.
Well, Henry the Fourth and the Fifth.
Yeah. Oh, are you doing not Henry, but what's his friend? Is it Faust?
No, I'm doing Hal
Hal.
and Henry the Fifth.
Okay, so Hal, this young character. Oh, is it Spidey?
No, no.
Okay, so coming into a leadership position, kind of reluctantly, young character, and then triumphing, but having to leave his friends behind. Okay, you got me stumped. Who are you going for that?
It's going to be Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes, I can totally see that. Yes, that works. So young Bruce to this complicated character post-trauma. Yep, that is Henry. Yep.
Post-trauma.
Yes. Yes, the
adverse effects of losing your parents.
yes, yes, and being forced into another role.
Right.
And not being able to make that adjustment at the same time that you
and having
need
to grow up hard and fast and being responsible and just all of the things. And actually, A.R. Farina and I are working on that one together. So it's going to be a double essay, if you will. So we have more room to play with it. And we're going to, it was something that he was talking about. And I got so excited about it. He's like, well, let's write this one together. Hey, we're best friends now, so we can do that.
Yeah. So, maybe getting ahead of you, but the scene in Henry V where he has to sacrifice his friend, where he has to say, you've been a criminal and now I'm the king and I've got to, which element of Batman is that sacrifice, do you think?
Oh, so we haven't started writing it yet because I've been trying not to think about this.
Yeah. I'm putting you on the spot. I'm wondering if it's either something in Bruce's life that he sacrifices, like
like I was thinking
willingness
it's a personality trait.
Yeah.
Because I do think that he would, and I don't think it would be a sacrifice in the sense of a death. Like it wouldn't be that kind of sacrifice because he's just about you have to obey the law and he doesn't kill.
No, I'm wondering if it's, an unwillingness to acknowledge in his Bruce Wayne persona, I could be a healthier person to be around, but I'm willing to pretend to be this kind of, incredibly shallow billionaire.
Yeah, it could
so
just
that I don't let you in.
His future, like his future could be that, like his future as a functioning adult as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Because he has given up that future.
Yeah.
In order to pursue this goal. But I'm not saying that that's what we're going to say. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's worth thinking about.
I need to reread it because I need to just explore the possibilities. I'm also going to watch The Hollow Crown so I get another perspective of it. And, there's not any one particular Batman comic I'm going to base it on.
Yeah.
There are so many different storylines, but I'm pretty well versed in a lot of them. So I think between the two of us, we will have to, but that's a good question to consider.
And even dealing with Shakespeare, there are 400 years worth of interpretations and how much scholarship, and you could go down like a dangerous rabbit hole where you're like, well, in order to write this essay, I worked on it for 40 years. Like at some point you've got to go, this is my understanding of the play and that's sufficient, and we're moving forward with this essay. Because
when you read something with this in mind now rather than just going on what you already know, you're going to notice things that you didn't notice previously. Like, I had read Sherlock Holmes things before I wrote the essay for this, but because I went in it with a mind for the comparison between Irene Adler and Catwoman, I found so many similarities, especially in the first meeting of the characters, it's another one that's like, how is this not intentional?
Oh,
And then how is it not more well known? Because it feels like these things were stolen from each other. And if so, why? How is it a secret? Like, I don't understand. There are too many similarities for this to be an accident.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's actually some documentation that Hulk really was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like very intentionally at the beginning. And that's why Hulk is gray in the first, issue. And then they went to green. Like they were like, I picture Dr. Jekyll as gray. And then, they were
Maybe
like,
you should write that essay.
yeah, maybe I should write that one because, and it probably has already been done by somebody who is more knowledgeable than I am. But I think there is some actual textual, like, people, like in interviews where they shared that fact. But it would be fun to then go look at the way Hulk progressed beyond Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and how that still was informed by that choice. So yeah, that's very cool. I'm glad you're doing a second one too. I'm because this is so rich. There's a lot of characters that you can find to do this with.
It's one of those things that took on a life of its own too, because some of the essays in here are not those types of comparisons. Like that was the original thesis for it. But then when people started writing, we're all about freedom. We had a few people say, I was trying to write this, but this is what came out. And it's still on brand, but it's not that specific message. And this is a brilliant essay. Keep it. Like we want it to take on a life of its own. We want this to be whatever it needs to be. Like give it room to grow and breathe and live and be what it is.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, maybe I should do that one. Because it would be cool to do Hulk and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and how Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are themselves related to the werewolf myth. And this character.
Yeah. Look, this is my official invitation. You may write this essay, and if you are willing to deal with Tony and me as editors, you have our invitation to join us in one of the collections.
That sounds wonderful. It's just time. Yes, if I can find the time, I would love to write that.
What's the show about?
Listeners, you're hearing this here first. Like if that essay ever comes to exist, you'll be like, I watched the moment when that, started percolating. And I totally stole it from you because you had it first. So I'll have to.
You know what though? If I think you can write it better, and I do, because I was just hypothesizing when I thought of it. I didn't have any of that background. I would have to do all this research first, and you already have it. So imagine how much better your essay will be because you're starting there, and then you'll do research on top of it.
Yeah, and right away I'm going, oh, and there are Greek and Roman characters, and there are Egyptian characters who lose control at different. Yeah, that could be so much fun.
I want this to be your daydreaming. Like what you're daydreaming about is you can't let go of this essay.
Yes.
And it comes out when you're supposed to be writing something else.
That's exactly what'll happen. I'll get stuck in the swampy middle of the next novel and go, you know what? I could take a little break and write a great essay. That's
yeah.
Okay, well, now I've got a plan. So where can folks find your work online? Where's the best place to find your stuff?
Well, on my website, mstonyatodd.com, which I am kind of in the middle of, I'm working on redoing the website. So if you go there and there's a problem, it's probably because it's under construction, because I have the essay collection coming out. And then I also have 52 Love coming out in February. I'm going to have things to sell now. So I need to update the website. And then because I'm doing that, I may as well make some other changes. There's just a lot of things that I've been putting off. So expect there to be some construction issues, but you can also follow my newsletter, which if you go to that, you'll find out what the latest and greatest things are. I'm on Femon Podcast, and you can follow me on social media at Ms. Tonya Todd.
Very cool. And are you making this? Are you planning on selling directly from the site?
No, I'm going to have links available, but in the way it looks pretty and not
right. Where,
I took two fingers and put these things on my website.
Yes.
I'm actually hiring someone to redo it, but I have to figure out all the things that I want.
Yeah. It's
still a lot of work, even if you're not the person doing it, because there are all these questions that you need to answer and all these decisions to make when you're not doing it yourself. It's like, oh, okay.
Well, I'm kind of acknowledging we are not experts at everything. And so, yes, you
Yeah,
can produce these wonderful books. They're available, but that doesn't make you a web designer.
exactly. And it was fine when I was starting out, and I'm just trying to, I did have help too, but my first one was just me. Then I had help from someone, and now it's reached the point where, okay, I need to get like a professional web builder to work on this because I have too many things going on in my life. So A, I don't have the time, and B, it needs to look a lot nicer than I can make it look. And this is not my area of expertise.
Yeah, although I will tell you, one of the best pieces of advice I got from the person I hired to do the web design for NotAPipe Publishing was bear in mind a website is passive. And if you can't get people to it, it doesn't matter how much you've invested in a fancy website, nobody will see it. So,
Yeah.
he was really helpful in pushing me to put the energy towards driving traffic to it. Because otherwise it's just there and it's really cool, but nobody sees it.
Yeah.
So
Who's going to find it if you don't
yeah.
tell anyone about it,
Yeah,
right?
it's a lot more of the kind of social media. Do you do paid media? That's always but yeah, that's it. These are the tricky decisions that we as writers never thought, oh, I'm gonna have to engage with.
Right. I just want to write my story.
Just let me write the books. That's great. Well, so do you have any ideas about who else I should have on this show as a guest?
Okay, I am very involved in the literary community. How many people can I name?
Uh, uh, Give me one or two, and then after the show, you can give me anybody else I should be reaching out to because I would love to have, a big long list to choose from. But who's somebody where you think this would be fun for them?
Oh, there's so many. Lisa Rain.
And what does Lisa write?
She writes romance, but her big claim to fame book that I think is just so amazing is a Highlander book.
Oh, really?
But she's a lawyer and a teacher, and she loves comic books. And it's just, I feel like she would be a good fit for this
Oh,
show
yeah,
because
absolutely.
she's the one who said, hey, once you get this essay collection out, you should look into getting it put into schools because it can help kids in school think about classic literature as a
Yes.
medium that they might enjoy rather than it going, this is obviously geared toward people who like one or the other, but it's harder to get people who are only into comics into classic literature. And if they see it's the same character,
Yes.
it might be a gateway to.
Well, and when you were talking about that lens, when you're re-examining Sherlock Holmes and you're seeing that, giving students permission to read with that lens. There's nothing wrong with looking for your favorite comic book character in a piece of classic literature. That's a great way to go, oh, what's this archetype that I am familiar
Right.
with? It's a good way to, engage with other media. So I've got a friend who teaches AP Lit and then a separate course that's mythology and folklore. She's brilliant. It's a very, and I'm absolutely gonna, I'll probably read Comics Lit myself first, and then I'm gonna share my copy with her because yes, she can absolutely use this in both those classes to say you love comic books. Here is the way that you can engage with lit in this, healthy way. And also, I'm thinking in the mythology and folklore class to kind of reinvigorate that idea of, this is our modern mythology.
Mm-hmm. Then the
Oh, that's
other
very cool.
person, if only two, this is self-serving, but A.R. Farina, my co-editor, because he knows so much about comic books and he has his own Jane Austen retelling series. So he could come and talk to you about the Austen Chronicles. So it wouldn't just be about Comics Lit, but he could tell you about how he's taking each of those novels and turning it into a YA novel that's more contemporary, and he's created this whole universe and it's pretty fantastic.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and I love that for those readers. Like that's, that because we don't so often we don't teach, literature as though it's alive. Like this is,
Right.
that retelling that he's doing is entirely legitimate and literary, and people should be reading it and going, this is the story that is being told for me. I think that's a wonderful
Yes.
gift that he is
Yes.
giving to those modern readers. That's very cool. And
Agreed.
it's a gift to Jane Austen too. Like,
It so
you're not
is.
harming the person by modernizing their work, you're sharing it. And some percentage of those students will then, young people will read that and go, I need to go read my Jane Austen now.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, well, so thank you for those. I will definitely reach out to those folks. And before we get to our send-off, there's some folks I need to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3Ds. And thanks to Halisna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's song, so email me about that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com, check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it. Check out Tonya's Comics Lit. It's coming out in October. And when you have read it, give it that 5th star, write a little review. It makes a huge difference. Make Tonya's day. That does not take a ton of your time and makes a huge difference to authors. So just a little tap on that 5th star and few sentences about why it meant something to you. And same thing for this show. I'm too old to say smash that like button, but if you could gently tap on the thumbs up button, that would be greatly appreciated.
Gently tap on it.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't need you to damage your mouse. It's okay to just click on the thumbs up button as long as you do it an odd number of times. So Tonya and I want you to remember 3 things this week. Tonya, what's your advice for everybody?
Sometimes procrastination is preparation.
Absolutely. And I always say a book without spaces would be gibberish, and our lives need spaces too, so don't ignore the spaces. And third, no matter how much you procrastinate, Tonya and I are still proud of you.
If I take my time, I make up my mind.